So thank you. So we are live. So let's start. So very good morning, everyone. So I welcome you all for this workshop which we are conducting on a cloud security in association with Checkpoint. So this is the second day of the AISS. So this is the 15th edition of our annual Information Security Summit that we are conducting on a virtual platform due to the pandemic. So few thoughts before we start. So please keep your phones on a silent and be attentive. We are trying to focus. We are throw some light on the important aspect of cloud security. I have an eminent panelist from Checkpoint with me, Mr. Ashish Tandon. I would like to introduce him. You just please go ahead and introduce yourself. Please give some information about what's your role in Checkpoint and what you do, and then we will start with the workshop.
All right. Thank you. Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Ashish Tandon, and I'm the Cloud Security Lead at Checkpoint India. So I'm very glad to be here today with all of you. So over the next couple of hours, we'll go through some key scenarios for cloud security. How do you really end up defining it for your organization? Because cloud is a new area, the skills are limited, and so how do you really define security, for this environment without having to have the skills with cloud? So that's the crux of this workshop. There's an interesting game we'll play towards the end, which will help you determine if you really picked up the skills. I would encourage you to have your mobile handy. Please keep it on silent, but you will need a second screen, and it will be ready for that.
Thanks, Ashish. So as Ashish mentioned, let's make it interactive. Let's try to learn out of this workshop, and we are here for that. So let me begin with the context setting for this workshop. So the cloud security is definitely one of the key areas that we are looking at, because cloud technology is really booming up, and due to this pandemic, most of the organizations are pushing and they're transforming to the cloud. They are heavily trying to adopt work from home solutions due to the pandemic. So this pandemic really has challenged the traditional mechanism or traditional way of working, and that becomes one of the new key drivers, I would say, for cloud adoption. Most of the organizations are really looking for that remote culture, and that remote culture is enabled by one of the scalable technology, and cloud is the one option, one technology which we look at as a scalable technology, and they say that the next era and next decade will be also cloud technology. Because of there are some initial drivers that cloud delivers, and they offer, right? One of the key drivers that cloud offers is definitely the scalability and agility of the features to the IT infrastructure. So due to that, definitely organizations are embarking on the cloud journey. But while they are embarking, definitely there are some sort of challenges, and the security and privacy. Data security is one of the key aspects. Means last month we have published one report on cloud security. So, other hand, the cloud market is really booming up. So, as per the NASSCOM and the ACI report, the infrastructure service market in India will be about 2.4 billion by 2022, and which will be about 2.4% of a global market, which is a really good expected number. And while this market is growing in India, we have done a survey with the key digital platforms and key user organizations. So cyber security and data security becomes a key aspect that they are looking at as a problem to solve when they are embarking on a cloud. So I think today is the right day and right partner with us who will definitely walk us through on especially the public cloud, because public cloud where usually organizations are having some sort of imbroglio in terms of what are the responsibilities that individual has. So means what responsibility about security, what responsibility about compliance, what responsibility about infrastructure that stays with the customer. that confusion always remains there. And due to that particular confusion, definitely there is a scope for the keeping vulnerabilities behind. And those vulnerabilities are then exploited by the attackers and threat actors. So I think this is a right start, and I will hand over to you, Ashish, that how you want to start with it, and we would like to hear from you that how to mitigate the risk for cloud, especially data leakage and how to understand the sharing recovery model. So over to you, Ashish. I will just give you a presentation right so that you can share your screen.
All right, thank you for that context, Vivek. So let me just share my screen, and I hope now visible.
Yeah, so you can put it into the presentation mode. Yeah, good. Yeah,
cool. All right. So as Vivek mentioned, I think we just want to share some stats with you. So look, public cloud was accelerating even without the COVID pandemic. But over the last 6 months, almost over the last trailing 9 months, it's just gone exponential. All estimates of cloud growth have actually been surpassed. So we are seeing this almost, I would say a hurried shift, right, to the cloud. So this has got most of the security organizations across the world, a little worried, because customers have done maybe years of digital transformation in 6 to 9 months. So this is it just sets the context of why this is important, right? Why we should be focusing on this topic. One of the first things that I want to make sure that we are all aware of, and this is one of the basic things that everybody who's using public cloud should be aware of, right? So there is something called the shared responsibility model. All public cloud providers, be it AWS, Azure, or Google, if you go out and search for this, they will find that they've published something that looks like this, right? It's a combination of all three in a way. And my easiest way to kind of explain this, if you want to keep this in mind, is think about it if you were actually hosting a public cloud in your virtualized environment, right? You would be responsible for your data center. You'd be responsible for the security of that data center and of the underlying applications, right, or of the underlying infrastructure. But anything that you put in on top of that is your responsibility. So it's very similar. Just keep that in mind when you think of public cloud. So everything that you're putting onto the public cloud is like your own virtual data center. Everything that you have to do for your own data center, which is you have to put up your firewall, you have to put up your own operating system patches, you have to look at network control. All of these things are still within the customer's purview, right? The cloud providers ensure that no two cloud consumers can access each other's data. That segregation, that security, the physical security is by far better than what most enterprise customers are able to do. So no doubt about that. But if we ignore this piece which is on top, which is what the customer is supposed to do, this is what results in breaches, because this needs to be clearly understood. Okay. So let's see what that means, right? Now, when you start moving on to the cloud, one of the things that you realize is it's a different set of skills. So you don't necessarily have those skills in your organization. So can you look to experts to help you do that, right? So that's certainly a very good option. And despite the fact that cloud is kind of self-service, you can go out and automatically spin up images and things like that, but you still need to have the best practices to do that. If you don't do that, you could leave something misconfigured, you could leave something open that you're not aware of. So this trend is recognized by most analysts. If you look at it, both Gartner, IDC, they have published these kind of articles, these studies that talk about the top players in the space. And one theme that you will find there, which is interesting for everybody, regardless of whether you've outsourced your cloud management to somebody or not, is that automation plays a key part. So the idea is everything is infrastructure as a code inside your cloud. So the more you automate it, the more you follow best practices, the less likelihood there is of you making a mistake. Okay, because another stat that you need to keep in mind is, as per Gartner, 99% of all breaches on public cloud are because of some mistake that the consumer makes, that the user of the cloud makes, right? So it makes sense that you follow automation, that you try to get all those best practices in, right? Now this may seem like a good approach, but in reality, so if you're thinking that, hey, I've done all of this, I've done automation, or maybe I've outsourced it to a expert to run my cloud, and like the gentleman in the photo is sitting and relaxing, you have to think again, because more often than not, you have to break away from automation for some ad hoc activity. You'll run into something which you'll need to do. So it's never possible to be 100% on automation, right? And what if that automation itself has a misconfiguration, right? That's something that you need to think about. So you have to have, even if you don't have the skills for cloud, you somehow have to define some basics, right? You have to define a security contract for your cloud, which means that you define the security policies that are going to be there for your cloud. You define how your cloud should be optimally used, right? There's certainly a lot of industry standards like CIS benchmarks, there's NIST, and organizations have been running their own security policy for decades now, right? So you have the knowledge about what needs to be done. It just has to be applied to the context of cloud. And second very important thing is a SOP, right? This is very important because people take business decisions on cloud, right? You have to deal with some sort of an emergency. You have to deal with an urgent piece of work that needs to be done, and you're going to break away from your standard procedure. You have to know what you need to follow. So what are the things that you need to think about, right? First of all, you define your policy. You say, how is your data going to be treated, right? What kind of policy do you have for your identity and access management? What kind of exceptions are allowed, right? Let's take an example. We all hear of these S3 bucket breaches, right? Or Azure blob storage breaches have even become very popular these days. Popular, don't use the wrong term of the word. Unfortunately, they're becoming all too common. All of these happen because somebody misconfigured them, right? Now, was that because of a policy which was set wrong? Was that because someone did not know when they were taking that decision to put something in the public domain, what was the process to be followed, right? Is there an approval? Is there somebody who's a security expert in your organization who should first take, should approve something like that after taking everything into consideration? And finally, is there an audit trail maintained for everything that you're doing on the cloud? So whether you have the cloud expertise within your team or not, these are things that you need to define, okay? And this becomes a problem because security teams don't entirely understand cloud, and cloud teams are not necessarily security teams, right? So there is a cusp area in between where we really need to collaborate and come up with this. Okay. So this is the problem, right? And let's try to now get into what this means. So why is it difficult, right? So these things make sense. You would do this in your own environment. Why is it difficult to do it on cloud? Okay. If you look at just AWS as an example, when they started out, they had something like 25, 30 services. Today, they have more than 200 services that are available. Okay, and your DevOps teams, your cloud teams are going to use them because today you're able to do things which seem like years and years worth of project work is done in weeks now, right? Let's take an example of machine learning and using AI in your applications. This was a massive task. It's unbelievable. Just about 4 or 5 years ago. Today, you can build a chatbot and you can embed AI into that. Right? It's easy to do. So the point is, these innovative services are going to keep on expanding, and you will have continued usage of them. Okay. Next thing is you also have to deal with compliance, right? Some sort of compliance. Most organizations in India look at ISO 27001. If you are in the BFSI segment, you'll probably want to look at PCI DSS, and then for global organizations, GDPR and others are important, right? How do you map these regulations to the controls that you have available on the cloud? Okay, and this is one thing that I think we should take very, very seriously. The controls that are available on cloud are plentiful. It's not that you don't have security controls and you cannot secure your cloud with them. It's just how do you apply them. And the other problem with compliance is that it's a moving target when it comes to cloud, because you could be compliant right now, but then an hour later there could be configuration drift. Somebody could change something on your cloud, and then you're no longer compliant. So the old model of doing a compliance check maybe once in a quarter or once in a month is no longer relevant, right? If you really want to use compliance as a way to ensuring security in your environment, right? Because and why would we do that, right? Because compliance to the standards like CIS benchmarks for sure and others, they give out the best practices that you're supposed to follow if you want to avoid a breach. So if we need to do this, we need something called continuous compliance. Okay, and we'll discuss the approaches to do that, because obviously trying to do this manually is going to be very hard. So at this point, I want you to take out your mobile phones. If you have a QR code reader there, because I want to kind of share some things with you. I'm happy to also share these links later on, but it will help if you look at these URLs as we speak. Okay. So just give a minute for everyone to kind of get settled, see if they can take out their phones and scan this URL. Right now, I'm going to try and give you examples of how you can actually define these kinds of security principles or these kind of security rules for your cloud. Okay, so if you were able to open this up, if you're not, I've copied the sort of effective part of that on the screen. The first example that we're doing is we're trying to define, for instance, something around access management. Right. So on cloud, you have this concept of keys, very helpful because you don't want to always log in. You want to have programmatic access to your cloud. So you embed the authorization into a key. Great concept. The problem is, just like our house keys, these access keys can get misplaced. Right? Somebody could get a hold of them, and then if they do, then they have access to your cloud. And I'll talk about some examples about that, of how it's actually happened and what kind of disastrous results it had. So if you want to do this, the right policy is you should be setting a expiry on your access key. Okay. So in Azure, there is something called Azure policy, which you can use, which is a very nice tool to define this, right? So you would have to define, by the way, this scrolls all the way down, right? You would have to define something like this, which means that you need an expert who understands Azure policy and who's able to do this. Now, if you want to follow the basic, guidelines that are out there, like CIS benchmarks and others, you will find some of these are already given to you by Azure, by AWS and others, right? But if you want to modify this, and if you want any deviation from this for your organization, you need an expert who can do this for you. Okay. So this is one example, right? I hope you were able to open this up and look at it. And let's look at another example, right? So I'm going to kind of try and do this for you. And by the way, feel free to ask any questions. See if we can get this to be interactive. Another example, similar use case for AWS. Now, again, there's something called a first access key. Every time you create an account, somebody's logging in for the first time, they get a first access key. And one of the best principles is to make sure that this access key is rotated. So another tool, just like we saw with Azure policy, there is something called AWS config. and slightly better in the sense that you can go out and define these policies using a a GUI, right? So this is what you see on the screen there. Again, if you open this particular QR code, you will be taken to a blog entry which talks about how to do this, right? Because even though this is a fairly straightforward principle, that you want to ensure that the first access key, should be rotated, and this is something that you want to enforce in your environment. Having said that, it's not as simple as it sounds, right? So on that same page, you will find that you actually need to develop code to be able to do this. And that's why if you try to find this kind of an enforcement, right? You Google this for ensuring the rotation of first access key, you'll find there are a lot of articles, and people are a little concerned about how they want to enforce this, because this is not it's not like you can just go in and type something and you're done. So you do have to enforce this. These are very, very important areas. If you don't do this, you could be giving those proverbial keys to the kingdom to somebody, right? They could come in and really do havoc on your environment. Okay. So these are a couple of examples of how you would do something like this with native tools. Now, obviously, we understand that this is a problem, right? And as Checkpoint, what we have done is we've tried to abstract these rules into a simple English-like language. And this is going to be an interesting exercise. So go ahead and either open up this QR code, or you can also go to gsl.dom9.com. Okay, remember that URL because we're going to use it for a game towards the end of the session, right? So we'll now try to do the same thing that we were doing earlier, right? Because going back to the problem definition, right? You have these policies that you should be defining for your cloud. Whether you outsource your your cloud management to some sort of an expert, or you're just doing it on your own and you have your in-house cloud team, the security team needs to be able to define these rules, because finally they know they are the ones who have the domain knowledge about the best practices that need to be followed. So if you look at this example, go back to what we were doing earlier in terms of writing that Azure policy. Now that same thing can be defined as a simple one-line statement, right? So we say that key vault, which is where you store your keys in Azure, their keys should contain enable true, which means that it's a valid key, it's being currently used. It should expire after Monday, right? So this is, and this is, you define how soon you want to expire it. But the idea is that now, as a policy, you want to ensure that these attributes are set inside your policy on Azure. So you define this, and then you govern your environment in this way. Okay. Let's look at another example. So okay, so the idea was, compared to writing that policy, at least I found this extremely easy. Okay. So let's look at one more example. This is a little bit more complicated, but remember what we were trying to do in AWS, and you would need a developer to write that enforcement code for you, and then of course you also have to define the policy. So again, using this English-like language, which we really think is the way all security teams should be able to at least define their policy. This is how you would write it there. So you would say IAM user, which is a construct in AWS, right? Where you say it was not before 90 days, first access key is true, right? Should have the rotation policy in place. It's as simple as that. So now the whole policy that you were defining earlier with a fairly complicated code that you have to write, or combined with some additional editing that you have to do, you are looking at a way to commonly communicate this this policy to everybody. So the idea of this exercise is that the security team really looks at the policies that they need to define for the cloud, and then everybody also is in agreement because they also understand what's being done, including your auditors, right? If you're actually being audited, you can also define this with your auditors to say, this is the check that I'm performing. And they don't need to have cloud experts with them to be able to look at this. Okay, so these are some examples that I wanted to share. But okay, so again, compared to the process, it was fairly easy, right? But if for those of you who maybe opened up that that URL, you'll still notice that there are quite a few rules there. Right? It just gives you a sense of the enormity of the problem on cloud, right? Which is there are so many things that you need to govern. Okay, so it can be overwhelming when you start defining your policy for your cloud. So I've tried to narrow down the areas where you should start first, because one of the most important things, and let me just move this out of the way, is to be able to have achievable targets. Right? So you start with something that's the core requirement for your security, and then you move forward and do more things. Right? So number one area right now, especially because of work from home, is you've got to ensure that the access to your cloud is absolutely secure. And sometimes people confuse this with access to servers. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about access to the admin console of your cloud. Okay, so if there are people who are logging in from home, administering your AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, you need to ensure that first of all you use MFA, because that's the first line of defense. Don't make it easy for hackers to break into your environment. Okay. Second thing is then you need to look at more targeted attacks. Right? These are attacks where hackers really try to do something a little more complicated, right? So then you need to start looking at user activity, right? So if there's a user which is logged in and is doing things that they were not supposed to, that should set alarm bells ringing inside your environment, because it means that a hacker is probably inside your cloud, right? Third thing is just knowing what's going on in your cloud. And this is probably the most important area. Not knowing what you've got inside your cloud, what's being deployed, who spun up that server, who started that database, who put up this S3 bucket. These are important things, right? Having that visibility of who's deploying what when, right? And then making sure that when you've designed your cloud security in a way, right? And this is very important, right? A lot of people, when they start out their deployments for say Azure or AWS or whatever, they make these nice looking Visio diagrams. Okay, we've all seen it, right? I want you to try out an exercise, right? Ask whoever made that Visio diagram if they're willing to bet a month's salary that this is exactly how the cloud environment is, and if they're smart, they'll say no, because there's no guarantee. There are so many people who are accessing your cloud. Sometimes people do things to debug. Sometimes people have to make temporary changes. It's very difficult to know that yes, this is exactly how my cloud looks right now. Okay. It's also because the cloud consoles, the AWS, Azure, Google consoles, were never meant to be security consoles. Right? They're meant to be multifunctional. So they don't give you that kind of view. Okay. So how do you make sure that your design versus what's actually in your in your cloud is the same? Okay. And how do you ensure that when you use automation, when you're actually making sure that everything is deployed as per a standard, that's exactly how it looks. So this is another key aspect. So the key aspect that we covered so far. Fourth one is what I mentioned earlier, right? You have to automate. If you have just 10 servers, 15 servers in your cloud, and you can have somebody hit the refresh button, every a few hours or a few minutes, you're good. Once you start hosting 100, 200, 300 servers on cloud, this becomes extremely difficult, right? So you need to have automation to ensure that your security is properly being maintained, because keep in mind that it is going to change. There is no way to guarantee that whatever I did 1 hour back, I've heard this from cloud admin teams, right? And literally, it's like they vent their frustration sometimes. When I speak to them, so I just gave this cloud environment all BAPT done. Everything was nicely configured. I gave it to them, and 1 day later, it's in a mess, right? This is going to happen unless you actually train people, unless you actually give them guidelines and guardrails so that they can stay within that. They are going to make changes because they don't understand. Right? They may be making exposure without knowing about it. So that's the other thing, right? So you have to be in in a continuous mode of keeping up your security. All right. Let's look at the next slide. So, if you don't take anything away from this session, please look at these 5 things. Go back to your cloud environments and ensure that these 5 things are absolutely done. First thing, by the way, you should try and avoid or reduce the amount of usage of the root user to an absolute minimum. Only for emergencies, right? You should create other users because this is the most privileged, login for your cloud. If a hacker gets hold of this, it's game over, right? Nobody can save you. Let me be absolutely clear about that. So make sure that you've got MFA enabled. If possible, in fact, use a hardware MFA, which is more, secure, which is a device that you have to use. Second thing is services with excessive privileges. This is something which is very, very dangerous. And if you go back to olden times, right? If you anyone in the audience who's from the security domain, they know that the most I would say the cardinal sin was using admin as the user ID and admin as the password, right? Admin. Today that admin has become star.stuff. All developers do this, right? Including me. When I did my development, I don't care about all these things. I want to get my code running. I want to get things up and running as fast as I want. The best way to do that is give all the privileges. This is extremely dangerous. This has resulted in some of the biggest hacks, especially in places like serverless environments where it's very, very difficult to go in and monitor them. So don't give more privileges than what are required. Okay, this applies to both credentials as well as services. Okay, this is a no-brainer, right? Publicly exposed cloud assets, you have got to go and monitor them. Unless something is required to be exposed, don't expose it. And this is something that people who are running traditional data centers sometimes don't understand. In a data center, you would have to physically have maybe a patch cord or something to actually expose something that was inside your internal zone to the open internet. On cloud, it takes 2 clicks because everything on the cloud is natively exposed to the internet. You can actually define it to be an internet gateway in as little as 2 clicks, like I said, right? So this is something that you absolutely have to keep in mind. Build an inventory of your public IP addresses. You need to know what those are, what those connect to. Okay, this visibility of your cloud is absolutely essential. And trust me, if you've got that Visio diagram, don't assume. Probably assumption is the other biggest problem, after misconfiguration. That you assume everything is as per your design. Go in and check. All right. Fourth one, again, very important, logging. If you disable logging, you've taken away your last ability to do any, forensic analysis on what's going on in your cloud. Logging is expensive. It does add cost. But if you turn this off, especially for, for your sensitive accounts, you don't have any visibility into what happened. Okay, so don't do that. At least for your production accounts, make sure that logging is enabled. Last but not least, insufficient encryption and bad key management. And these are again very, very important areas. They result in a lot of breaches. And the idea is what I'm trying to convey here, right? Is that when you look at the hacks that happen on cloud, right? As a security company, I would love you to believe that hey, it was some amazing hack that you see in the movies. Somebody did some some fantastic thing to be able to break into your account. Point is, they don't need to. We make it so easy. It's like leaving the door open. You can have the best camera installed in your house, but if you leave the door open, they're just going to walk in. So this hygiene is probably the #1 thing that we need to do on cloud to make sure that we are not prime targets for the hacks that are going on today, right? Every few days, every few weeks, there are these this news of some sort of a breach. This is the most important and urgent thing that we need to do today. Okay. Another one, very, very important. By the way, this happened to Uber, right? So you can go back and read about it, read about the story that happened there. So GitHub repositories are fantastic places to collaborate. People put up their code there, but please, please, please do not embed your keys inside your code. This is what happened to Uber. They put out their keys in a public repository like this, and just like you have access to them, the hackers have access, and they keep scraping these repositories to find something which they can use. Unfortunately for them, at that time, a hacker found it, and they were able to do a lot of damage. This is again a very basic hygiene that needs to be maintained. You need to keep track of this. Okay. So with me so far, if I'm making this sound all a little difficult, it's just that it is that way. Okay, and that's one of the reasons that I believe that CSPM is a very important tool that all organizations need to have to ensure that they're able to control their security, right? So these are just some URLs where you can go and find this service. It's called CloudGuard CSPM. You can go and consume it on the marketplace of your choice. But what do you do, right? Even if you have a CSPM product with you, right? How you use it defines whether your project of ensuring the security of your cloud is going to be successful or not. Okay, just having a tool doesn't help. So what is that process? I'll try to sort of put this out in 5 phases, right? Because it is a step-by-step approach. You're not going to be like, you just got a tool and you put next day you're all done. You slowly build up. So the first thing, you remember I talked about those Visio diagrams. First thing is make sure you visually inspect your cloud. So with the Checkpoint CSPM tool, you do get a very good visualization, and we will demonstrate this to you in a while. So this is meant for security professionals, right? And again, just remember the fact that these are 2 different skill sets, right? So networking professionals, security professionals, their focus is on ensuring that network exposure doesn't happen, right? So how do you give them that sort of pointed view to say that, look, here are your security groups. This is how you've defined them to be exposed. Here is your load balancer, your firewall. These are what are exposed to the outside world, and then progressively how it looks. So that visualization is absolutely key. The picture paints 1,000 words, right? Secondly, you need to find out if you have any exposures. So a lot of regulated industries anyway need to do this, but I think everybody should. You should go out and find out which are your public IPs, what kind of instances are dealing with them, even the ones that are currently shut down. So you may have public IPs associated with a server which is shut down. The minute it's brought up, it'll become public. So you need to be able to control it. Okay? Because if that has a vulnerability or if that's exposed, that's directly connected to something else inside your environment, you're giving the hacker a way, right? And it's important to think. It's important to think like a hacker. Right? You want to think that is there a way for them to break in? Okay, and how can I stop them? Second thing is, let's say that let's not bite more than we can chew, right? So you need to start with achievable targets. Pick out a standard which is relevant. I typically encourage everyone to start with CIS Foundations because that's a good standard. It's a very prescriptive standard, as I'll talk about it on the next slide. So this helps you build out, your strategy, take it, achieve the CIS foundations, and then you can look at the rest of the compliances after that, right? Third thing is, of course, evaluate the results, find out which are the misconfigurations in your environment. There is a discussion required. So if, for instance, as a security team, you're doing this exercise, you're finding out what are the problems inside your cloud, you need to discuss, right? You need to find out if there's a business reason to do it, and then maybe can you mitigate that, right? Which is the next step, right? Mitigate them to make sure that if there is a real business need to do something, you ensure that that's properly taken care of, right? Let's take an example, right? Maybe there is an S3 bucket that needs to be exposed, but then that S3 bucket needs to be configured such that it's not connected to the rest of your cloud. Okay. Having automatic notifications, very, very important, right? Because you can't always log into a tool and be there the whole day. You can't be logged into, definitely can't be logged into your cloud accounts. Just to give you an example, right? There are people who have maybe 15 to 20 cloud accounts. When they're logged in, they don't even know which account they're in, right? Because it's usually just a number. So how do you keep track of all of this on an ongoing basis? But even with the CSPM tool, you're not going to be logged in the whole day. So you need to set up notifications so that you can address the findings as you are informed about. And on the last part of it is the continuous assessment, because this will keep on changing. You have to keep on finding out. Just because I fixed all my problems, say I fixed everything, right? I'm CIS benchmarks, compliant, right? Whatever version you're looking at, I cannot rest easy. The very next hour or the very next day, I could again be back to, maybe 90% compliance because somebody changed something. It's a continuous process. You have to keep on improving it. You can automate some of the remediation so that you say that, hey, look, some things I simply do not allow. I don't care what the business justification is. You're not allowed to do this. So you automate some of that. But the rest of it, you really have to discuss with the business teams, with the DevOps teams to find out how do you fix it, right? And you need to have an audit trail. Anything that's changed, these are systems of record that you're running on cloud. You want to make sure that you've got a good audit trail of that, right? So this is a way to do this. And by the way, towards the end of the workshop, let us know, if you have, if you're interested, we could run this as a one-on-one workshop for you as well. Okay. So let's get to scoping or your compliance, right? And this is again a very important thing. Sometimes, or well, most of the times, you find that compliance teams do a lot of rework, right? So they spend about 20 to 30% of their time actually reworking the same requirements for different compliances. So what we recommend is that you start with the more prescriptive compliances like CIS benchmarks and PCI DSS, right? These were written by technical people. So to give you an example, right? Say you are looking at access control. In GDPR, which is kind of written by lawyers, right? GDPR, these are not written by technical people. These are written by lawyers and industry specialists. That's probably just going to say that you need to have a good access control policy, right? Whereas if you go to CIS benchmarks, they'll be very specific. They'll say how you configure MFA for each cloud. So the idea is if you've done CIS benchmarks, then you can kind of move towards the less prescriptive ones, right? So start with the more prescriptive ones, move towards the more prescriptive ones as you go along. This will really help you in your compliance journey, and more importantly, this will help you ensure that you are maintaining security on your cloud with these standards defined in these industry industry standards, right? So, all right. So with this, just a few slides on our product, just to give you a sense of what we do, and then I'll get into a demonstration because I like to keep it live, right? I'm sure you want to find out, you want to see things more than read about them. But just to get a big picture view, we think that these are the 5 areas, right? Regardless of whether we do it or anybody else does it, these are the 5 areas that you should be really concerned about and and you should make sure that you've got them locked down in your environment. Number one is network security, right? So you have to remember, when you go onto the public cloud, it's just like any other data center, which means that you need all those advanced network security features that you had in your data center. So if you're not sure about it, what I would recommend is list them down, right? So you've got IPS, you have URL filtering, application control, network antivirus. List down those features and see whether you actually have them in your cloud or not. And if you do that exercise, by the way, you'll realize that it's available in parts in different clouds. So especially if you're on a multi-cloud setup, it's very difficult to have one homogeneous policy across all of your clouds. So what something like our network security product, CloudGuard Network Security, gives you is that you're able to define one policy for every cloud. It doesn't matter what cloud you're on. Okay, and this sits as a gateway inside your cloud, and it's protecting all your traffic, whether it's coming into your cloud, which is north-south, or lateral movement inside your cloud, services calling other services, or even connections to your data center or to the outside world, right? And it's very important. There's all kinds of news that you read about where a piece of software was actually connecting to a command and control location, right? And you want to be able to block those kind of attacks. So this is very important. You do that. Second thing is the posture management, which I spoke about earlier, and this is all to ensure that everything that you're configuring natively, your cloud native security, has absolutely got to be foolproof. Because remember, unlike a data center, where once you put up a firewall, you pretty much have one path, right? It's like a in a castle, right? You have a moat and you have one way to come in. On cloud, you could have multiple windows opening up because somebody could change the configuration, suddenly expose something, expose an S3 bucket, and you can't really protect that just with a firewall. So posture management is definitely important for your on-premise environments, but for cloud, it's an absolute necessity, right? Because without that, you could have done some misconfiguration and bypassed your firewall as well. And kind of a mirror approach of that is really the cloud intelligence and threat hunting. So once you've done, once you've set this up, right? Once you've set up your perimeter and you're maintaining your posture, you've kind of set up a baseline, right? Now you're sure that this is how my cloud should function. Now you can start looking for anomalies, right? Like if you've read about the Capital One breach which happened on cloud, that was a very complicated multi-step process that was used to actually break into that cloud. How do you catch that kind of an attack, in motion? That can only be done if you look at your logs, and if you then apply some threat intelligence to it. You apply frameworks like MITRE ATT&CK, right? These are then tools that you have available to find out if there's an activity like that going on, right? So this is where the threat intelligence piece comes in. And then there are some very specific workloads that get deployed these days. APIs are becoming very, very popular. Just of the news about some of the BFSI segment in India beginning to now expose APIs for the entire ecosystem. This is very important, right? This is going to be we live in an API economy, as they say, right? So as you keep doing this, you'll find that securing APIs with traditional WAF becomes very, very difficult, right? Because anyone who's applied WAF to this kind of an environment will realize that there are too many false positives, because this is not a static service. It's going to keep changing. So we take a different approach, and we try to first baseline what's in your API, and then only look at anomalies when they happen. Okay, and we do things like validating the schema. So in an API, when you're requesting using the schema, we can validate that it's correct. It's actually coming from a genuine source and not from a bot, right? So very different considerations for securing APIs, and that's where this comes in. And last but not the least is containers and serverless. This is becoming very, very popular. Serverless for sure. And this is again a very different ball game when it comes to securing these, because serverless functions or any sort of a microservices mesh, right? With that word itself, you realize that they can call each other. So there's no guaranteed path to say that, hey, I'm going to get all my requests for this serverless function from this path. So you cannot put a WAF or a firewall in front of it. The only workable approach is when you make the code itself different. So you need approaches to make that code have some sort of runtime protection, as we call it, right? But there's also a step before that where you have to really find out if you've done any overprivileged, you've granted privileges more than they really require this. And this is something that is a very dangerous trend right now. And if you are on serverless, this is something that you need to really think about pretty quickly. There have been some very dangerous hacks, mage card attacks, and others which happened where credit card numbers were skimmed. And imagine that this is a serverless component that runs for a second or for a few seconds, and they were smart enough to just make sure that they were able to skim those credit cards in that time. So these attacks are happening. Typically happens because of reuse of code. Also happens because you've just granted every privilege so that as bad as just letting the hacker have your cloud. Okay, so important approaches for this to be considered. So what do we do in this platform is we make sure that we have what we call a high fidelity context, right? We are collecting all of this data, whether it's user activity, whether it's the flow logs, a full asset database, right? A CMDB of your entire cloud. We take all of that, and so that you. Secondly, we make sure that we talked about GSL earlier. So you will find that in this tool, we've already defined all the standards that you would not want to follow, industry regulation standards, best practices, they're all already coded into this, right? But because this is so easy, because it's an English-like language, and by the way, we'll have a great exercise around this towards the end of the session, stick around for that. We can now define these for our own, enterprise-wide standard as well. So you go out and define it. It's a simple, wizard that helps you run that, and you easily define your own policies, right? And last but not least, shift left, fail fast. These are the mantras, right? When it comes to cloud development, right? One thing that I don't know if any of you attended the session yesterday, right? I mean, one major change which has happened because of cloud for security professionals is there were two favorite words of the security team: stop, wait, right? I want to make sure that the environment is correct before you deploy something. This has gone out the window. No security professional today can stand up and say to the DevOps team, unless I say so, you can't deploy. You want to go and have a fight about it with your management, the DevOps team will win. Because today the market is so dynamic, there's so much competition that you want to get that update out as soon as possible. So unless the security is part of the CI/CD cycle, right, it's going to be very, very difficult to actually adopt it. So this is a very, very key thing that's there, and it's definitely part of our platform. We recommend that you use that. Bird's eye view of what we do, right? So we talked about posture management, we talked about securing the network, talked about all that threat intelligence that you can bake into your data that you're getting from the cloud, and then you integrate it with all kinds of services. You can combine additional information from things like vulnerability scanners like Tenable.io and others. You could make sure that if you're using things like Terraform, that Terraform script itself is first scanned and it's compliant with what you want to be. And then last but not least, what you see in the center, this CloudGuard, this is the automation framework. So if you've got that S3 bucket that somebody exposed at 2 a.m. in the morning, you don't have to wake up to fix that. The CloudGuard will go and fix that for you, right? So this is the sort of bird's eye view of that solution. And by the way, this is something that we offer to anyone who wants to run this workshop. in a detailed fashion for your own cloud, just let us know, and we'll kind of do that. I don't know if we have the ability to run a poll here, but we'll be happy to run this and run it for you. Okay. All right. So with that, I want to move on to see if there are any questions, and if not, I'll get into a demo. So one will look up.
Yeah. So we have a few questions, Ashish.
All right.
So I'll take those questions one by one. Yeah. So there is a simple question that someone is asking, that how can a startup deploy cloud computing with the different models? So if any startups or any small and medium business, if they wanted to go for a cloud, which model would they prefer, and what are the security measures that they would be taking care of?
Absolutely. Sorry, let me move away from this so that it becomes a little easy for you to see. Look, we understand this, and that's why look, Checkpoint products are available as bring your own license as well as pay as you go. So you can, doesn't matter what your size of environment is. If you go back to the QR codes that I shared earlier, right? All of this is available as pay as you go. So if you're a startup, if you want to make sure that you're secure from day one, by the way, we have a lot of startup customers, you can go out to the marketplace, and this really does it on an hourly basis for the size of your cloud. So I would recommend making sure that you've got a basic firewall in place. It is again available on the marketplace, and also CSPM, right? CSPM probably to start with first if your core operations are on cloud, because there may be vulnerabilities that you have right now which you're not aware of, right? Or there may be misconfigurations right now which you're not aware of. So start with the CSPM, and then you can move towards a firewall deployment as well. But it's available. It can be as small as you like.
Yeah. So there is one more question, Ashish. How does Checkpoint secure your data while transferring on a cloud? I think this question is regarding the cloud transformation. If someone is wanted to go from the on-prem to the cloud, in that particular transformation and transfer, how Checkpoint can secure their important client data?
Look, it depends on the size of the data that you're going to use, right? So yeah. Certainly there are these approaches from AWS and Azure to transfer bulk data, but when you're doing maybe if it's not that big, obviously I would recommend making sure that you deploy a Checkpoint firewall, the cloud network firewall on your cloud, and then use a VPN so that when you're actually doing the transfer, it's secure, right? Make sure it's on a VPN when you're doing the transfer for sure. Certainly with Checkpoint you have a good option. Also, anybody who is a Checkpoint customer already on premise, it's a very easy extension. Just adding another gateway on the cloud. It's still all managed from the same console, so it becomes very easy for you to set that up. But even without that, having a VPN is absolutely critical.
Yeah, thanks, Ashish. I think there are a few other questions as well, so we'll park it for the latter half. So I'll request you to go for a demonstration, Ashish.
Okay, cool. So this is what I was talking about. So let's take a step back and say that, look, you're already on cloud. You have maybe a couple of accounts, or in this case we'll see there are quite a few accounts here. So it doesn't matter where you are in your journey. The first thing you want to start doing is visualizing it in a very different way. So anyone who's logged into the AWS and Azure console, you'll find that all you see are like pages and pages of configuration, right? How do you start making sense of it? So I love the the configuration view here, which we call environments, right? So you start exploring all of your resources. You look at which are your assets. So this is giving you a CMDB of your entire environment. You can organize each of your clouds, as various organizational units, right? But let's look at some of these, right? So let's take a network security view. This is the most important thing, right? So remember I talked about the fact that you've got your cloud, you made that nice looking Visio diagram. Are you 100% sure that that's how it looks when you go in, right? First of all, there is no way to see it that way, right? You're not able to actually see that environment visually at all. That's the first thing that we address for you, right? You come in, it's like going into a Windows Explorer. You're seeing each and every one of your cloud environments. You see what regions you've got, right? And this is important for people to realize who are not on, maybe who haven't been big on cloud so far. Even the best or the biggest enterprises never had data centers in every country in the world. Today, if I swipe my credit card and start a AWS or an Azure account, I can set up a data center or a virtual data center in every part of the world. Make sure you've actually got an idea of what's going on in which region. So this gives you that, right? So I'm now going to explore a particular region. Again, this is a very visual view. These are each of the virtual private clouds that I create, right? VPCs. And in Azure, you have something called VNet, which again we show you. So this is actually showing you a bird's eye view of how they're actually connected to each other, right? What's connected to what. And then if I zero into a particular VPC, I get to know that, hey, this is the IP address CIDR block that I'm using, all good for the networking guys. This is all the assets that I've got deployed, right? But this is the fun part, right? So in your data center, you've always defined what's your external zone, what's your DMZ, what have you got, internally, which should never be reachable from the open internet, right? You get that kind of a classification automatically here, right? What you're seeing right now is a security group view, because typically that's how you segment your environment. You create security groups and then you define policies based on that. But you can also go out and see this from an asset view, right? So let me show you that as well. So now you're getting a sense of, okay, how many servers have I got? What, how are they connected? And then you can start doing analysis like, okay, you see this blue dot. This is basically the open internet, right? So for everyone who's from the networking background, that 0000 means any IP address can connect to this, right? So now, if this is connecting to one of my servers, and I know that, hey, by the way, this is using a port which means that they could directly SSH into this, right? I'm getting that visual view to find out that, okay, if I look at this this database, right? These are all the sources, right? This is everybody that can connect to it, and these are the targets, right? And if I again zero in on that, I see that there's this port which is opened up, which can be dangerous, right? So what does that mean? What is the security policy which has been configured here? And imagine now I'm in multiple accounts. I don't need to switch out, right? I can just click here, and I'm actually now going to the real firewall rules that have been defined for this, right? So I went from finding a problem visually, and by the way, this is not the only way to find it because you can't always be visualizing like this. But when you do that, I get to see all these policies, and I realize that this is the one which had that problem, right? This is an open, SSH, and if I am in a read-write mode, I can actually go ahead and just say, hey, just delete this, right? I don't want to keep this. But what if this was done for a reason, right? So today, people are working from home, so maybe you needed to grant somebody access for a short period for, doing some sort of, troubleshooting, or you do things like running a vulnerability scan with, one of the providers like Qualys or Tenable.io or whatever, and you need to open up a port for a short period of time, right? First of all, it should never be opened up with any, right? It should be for a specific IP address. But say you don't know the IP address, right? Say somebody is working from home, they'll be connected from broadband, and you don't know how to define it. You go out and actually give them access using a custom piece, right? So you can send them an invitation, right? This automatically detects their IP address and it sends them a link. And the best part is you define. Once they started the work, say after 25 minutes or 30 minutes, they should automatically expire. This is important because a lot of people do these kinds of changes, and because we're all busy, they forget to go in and close it. So you leave this hole in your environment without realizing it, right? So these kind of things become very, very important. But let's, kind of, once we've realized how it looks, what is the, what's the layout of my cloud, I want to then start figuring out if I can look at the misconfigurations in my environment. So this gave me a visual understanding of what's going on. Now I'm going in and checking, okay, I have all these best practices, like for instance, let's say I define it for AWS, for example, and I want to follow ISO 27001. So you see that the standard is already made available for me, right? And remember the English-like language. We're going to play a game for this towards the end, remember that. So now all of these standards are already defined in that simple English-like language, right? And say I am on this rule which relates to these two subsections of ISO 27001, which talk about securing data at rest, right? If I had to explain this to an auditor with, go back to the original thing about creating the AWS config and then defining a set of tools to do that, it's going to be hard to convince both the auditor as well as also communicate this internally. Here all I have to do is write one statement called, in this case it's about the Kinesis service, saying Kinesis should have encrypted visibility. So this is like the tweet of the compliance world, right? Small statements that can actually have a lot of power. So this way I've defined everything that I have. You see all kinds of sections here, whether it's for your S3 buckets, whether it's for your region, for all kinds of network exposure, right? So these rules are already here. So let's just see what an assessment looks like. So this can be used to now assess my environment, and I'm going to run this as a real-time scan, right? So I'm able to now find out what's the current situation in my cloud, right? What you would do in practice is, once you've identified the right policies or the right standards, you would configure them to run automatically, so that you are continuously monitoring your environment. But when I see this, I get a bird's eye view. I say, hey, there's about a 28% gap, right, in my compliance, and within that, roughly about half of them are high severity. So I've got a lot of things to fix. I can even find out, region-wise, how am I placed? Am I red? Am I blue? Now I can start zeroing into the ones that I really want to look at, right? Like for instance, let's look at S3 buckets, which are very, very, infamous, fantastic technology, but unfortunately a little infamous when it comes to breaches. So here in this case, I say that as per these standards, again, I need to encrypt my data, right? So that if it falls into the wrong hands, it's not misused. So this is telling me now that these are all the S3 buckets where the encryption is not turned on. And again, I know exactly what is being checked. It says S3 bucket should have encryption dot server-side encryption rules. So this means that unless this is defined, these S3 buckets are going to be non-compliant. Now, how do I fix this, right? So either you could share this remediation. You can take an extract of this report, share it with the teams, ask them to fix this, or if you decide that, what, I'm not going to take this risk. I don't want any S3 bucket in my environment not to be encrypted. It's a call that you could take. At that time, you can actually go ahead and configure something called an automatic remediation. Go out, just select the CloudGuard, as we call it, and that's it. With that, you're able to set an automatic remediation for this kind of a misconfiguration in your environment, so that the next time something like this is found, it's going to go and fix that for you. You don't have to reach out to anybody to fix it. Okay. But what if you decide that what, this is a valid reason, and I want it to be configured this way, right? And you might ask, if I'm going to exclude something, then why do I need a standard, right? The point is, even exclusions must be documented, right? Which means that you've actually taken the time out to create a policy, and you've also documented your exceptions so that everything is clear to everybody, right? There's no room for doubt, and that is absolutely necessary. So when you want to do that, you go out, create an exception, you have to put in a valid reason for why you're doing this. And next time in your scan, this particular finding will not show up, right? But as you know, as a good policy, you can always go out and then say, show me the ones that are excluded as well. It's not that it's not being checked. Think of it more as a filter on your report to tell you this is what you're going to get. Now, you could take this, you could extract it into a PDF, you could download it as an Excel sheet, and in all likelihood, what you will do is you set up a policy for this so that it's actually sent out as reports and also collected in the dashboard that you have in the product, right? And then you can go out and fix each of these and also see how you've been fixing these problems over a period of time. Okay. So a lot of other kinds of findings in this, just to give you some idea. It's about like for instance, I could find out about my IAM policy, right? Or about let's just look at that one for now. So again, start, right? So these are the IAM policies which nobody took time to define it. They were in a hurry, and then they said, yeah, give everybody everything, right? Very dangerous. So similarly, there are things about MFA. There are things about access control. There's a whole bunch of things that you can look at. And at this moment, I want to just open up this URL, and I encourage all of you to have this open up at some time when we play the game. So this is called gsl.domain.com. And the reason I want to share this with you is this gives you a very good idea about all the kinds of checks that you need to perform. And all these rules that I'm talking about, at your leisure, you can go ahead and read them. For instance, let's look at password policy, right? And again, this is available for AWS, Azure, Google. These are 3 tabs. You can just go there and look. And in this case, we're talking about the fact that password policy should be enforced. Yes, people, this is something that you need to configure. It's not something that is out of the box. So this is the policy that you're setting up. You're saying that it should be enabled in that account. And then there are other rules which talk about defining things like, well, how long should be the password, how soon should keys be rotated. You get the idea. So this is a very good repository. I would encourage all of you to go out and look at this, because this helps you fathom what is required, and it also helps you understand what are the best practices that you need to follow. Okay. So in the product now, coming back, these are the kind of things. And now you will see that in my dashboard, I can come in and customize how I want to consume these findings, right? So this is a default dashboard, and we have a few others. Like for instance, there's a default dashboard for AWS. So you see things like, okay, this is my this is my current status of my compliance. Which are the areas which have the biggest risks right now? Which accounts have the biggest risk? And I can zero in on anything like this, right? Say for instance, I can zero in and say, okay, I'm now looking at my most risky account. It has a lot of misconfigurations, and all of those findings that you were seeing earlier in that report are collected here. So I can now zero in on things that I want to fix, right? Like, for instance, let's look at this one, right? I'm not using the right SSL version, right? This is what it is about. Yeah, there you go. So this is now telling me this is something that I need to fix. This is the remediation steps. And if I have users in my system, I can go out and actually assign this to somebody, right? And then take it to closure. Right? So this way I've kept track of what's going on. But what if I actually wanted to get a sense of how is my compliance being doing over a period of time? You can do that as well. Let's see if I can show you an example. There you go. So this is my trend, right? So my compliance, and you configure what compliance you want to look at, what cloud account you want to look at. This is giving me a sense of what kind of trend I've had for my compliance, right? So I can keep a track of what's going on. I can keep a track of compliance by different accounts. All kinds of things possible here, right? So this is about all the standard compliance, but let's do a quick exercise. I'm sure you've all heard about this new act or bill that is likely to come up called the PDPA, right? The Personal Data Protection Act. So say that comes up and you want to be prepared about ensuring that your cloud is compliant to that. How do you do that? Let's make a simple rule right now, and you'll realize the power of using GSL. So I'm now going to build a rule to say that any of my EC2 instances in Amazon should not be outside of India, right? So I'm simply going to say instance, and then you see it guides me, right? It says should have, right? And these are all the attributes that are available that I can actually write a rule about. So I know that the right one for me to use here is region, right? Common sense. Now I can either give it a list, or if I want to be specific, just to make it easy here, I can go out and say, yeah. So by the way, I can cheat, right? And I'll show you how. So say I don't know exactly how it's named, right? Once I do this, I've created the rule. That's all I need to do. I can add this to my rule set and just continuously test it, right? Let's just test it for this right now. So you see that I created this rule, and in 1 minute, now I'll know any EC2 instances which are non-compliant. They're all non-compliant because there is no region called India out there. But if I want to get the actual name, all I need to do is go here, search in region, and then you see that if I had an India example, I would know exactly what it's called. Right? Just pick that and update my rule. So it's very, very simple. It gives the ability to the security teams to do a lot of things, right? Like I could build rules to say I want to let's take another example, right? Just in the interest of time, I'll make this quickly. So there are tags that people follow inside their environment, right? So you want to tell people to tag everything that they use as maybe production or test or staging, right? And you want to know if people are actually following that, because it's a company-wide standard, and you want to ensure that it's being followed, right? And this is just one example. There could be several others. So let's see how simple that could be. And again, I'm just talking about an instance, but I can look at everything else that's available there. I'll say should have. Again, say something like tags with key is equal to, and say call it env or environment, whatever you want to call it, right? And then I say and value, and then I can give a list if I like, right? So there's something called in. See how easy it is, right? So I can say prod test there. Okay. All right. And then I need to close this out. That's it, right? That's all that I need to do to actually now go out and check something which is fairly complex to do. Anyone who's checked for tags in their environment will know this is a very painful exercise, and it took me less than a minute to do this, right? And I know exactly which are the instances which are not following that, and I can go into the details and look at it, right? Very, very powerful tool. You can use it for a lot of things, everything from your route table to your Azure key vaults. Everything can be governed using this, right? So, and we keep adding more things here, right? So you'll see that. Let's just take a view of Azure for a minute. You see that there are some things here called preview. So these are new things that we keep adding. So as these cloud providers keep adding more and more components, we will keep adding them to the compliance rule sets that we give you, and you can also build your own custom rules. Okay, so this gives, I hope this is giving you the confidence of being able to now control the compliance of your cloud. And you'll get to test that out in a game very, very soon. Okay, so this is about posture management. So we talked about design versus actual, right, in terms of configuration. But remember, I talked about the fact that once you've built a baseline, things can still go wrong, right? So how do I start looking at that, right? And this is something that becomes very, very important, right? Now I can actually go in and say, this is my activity, right? These are my various users inside my account. What are they doing, right? What kind of activities are they doing? What things are they dealing with, right? And if I don't know what malicious activities can be there, I already have these pre-built queries for myself which are based on the MITRE framework, right? Which come and tell me, tell me if somebody is doing any of these things, right? Whether somebody has, deleted a network ACL, or they created an access key for root, which is a strict no-no. All these kind of things I can go out and explore, based on these predefined queries. But I can also visually explore this, right? So for instance, I'm looking at this, but I could go into the statistics, and I can actually find out, well, okay, what's going on overall in my environment, right? If I find something that's malicious here, I want to go out and look at it. Like, let's say somebody would get a get authorization token, right? And I don't think that should be something going on in my environment. So all I do is click on that and say and if you remember GSL, again, this is a GSL that gets created here, which is, in case of AWS, you're saying CloudTrail where event, is true, and then this is what you're looking at. Right? Export it. You just run that. Now you're going to be able to zero in on the exact activity which took place here, and you can, you can further isolate it and look at it, right? And when you go out and isolate this, you can simply look at the logs. Looking at hundreds of log entries, now I've zeroed in on the one that I want to really look at, okay? And what you would do in actuality is you would kind of use a lot of these pre-built rule sets that we give you for these events, so that you're alerted in time when something happens, and you're also able to take timely action against that, okay? Similarly, let's look at what could happen with my network activity, right? So I have a lot of these, network events that are happening inside my environment. Let's see if I can see it here. There you go, Traffic Explorer, right? So now I know that this traffic is coming inside my environment, right? But even in this diagram, I see there's so much. First of all, this visualization is not possible in your cloud account. But when you're looking at this, right, maybe I could zero in and say, okay, only show me the malicious traffic. How do we know it's malicious? It's because of the kind of threat cloud that Checkpoint has. They're able to correlate your data and tell you that this is a thing which is actually coming in, right? But say I want to do a different kind of analysis, right? I want to look at some statistics, right? And I want to see, like, for instance, where is this traffic coming from? So I see that my inbound malicious traffic is coming from the US, but then there's also something from Greece, right? Or some other country, right? And I'm concerned about it. Similar to what we did earlier. I'm sorry, there you go. It's very small. Let's just take United States for an example. I can make this bigger and use it, right? So I've got that now, and now I'm zeroing in on the specific areas that I want to target, right? So I'm not only looking at, say, the malicious traffic, I'm looking at malicious traffic which came in from a specific country. So you see that it's now narrowed down to a few things, right? And if malicious traffic to my load balancer is fine, but something to an instance is not fine, I can now zero in on that. And not only do I see that it's a SSH. So you see that I'm zeroing in on something that could be very, very dangerous, and I want to be able to isolate this. When you look at the logs here, anyone who has seen cloud logs, things like VPC flow logs, remember that they're a good data point, but they're not correlated. They don't have these headers. You can't really figure out what that data is, and you don't have any correlation. What we do is we take that almost like a series string that you have inside your logs, and we convert it into a JSON format, and we add all of this threat intelligence into it, right? So now I'm able to tell you that, by the way, this is malicious, right? Because it's coming in from a specific place. It's coming in from a class of malicious location that we call a scanner, right? And that's why this is malicious. Now, if you were to pass this data into your SIEM, if you do have a SOC setup and you have an SIEM, you would much rather take this kind of data, which is correlated, which has a threat intelligence built into it, so that your SOC operators can really do some targeted activity, rather than just taking the whole dump of logs and sending it to your SIEM. This dramatically improves the ability to monitor these environments. Okay. So I do want to leave some time for the game and for some questions. But by the way, I can keep doing this demo for hours if needed. So feel free to reach out to us if if you want to do this as a separate activity for your account or for your organization rather, and we'll be happy to come in and do that for you. We can also run this for your own cloud, okay, as a special offer to people who are here in the DSCI event today. All right, so with that, I'll just take a quick pause and see if there are any questions, and we could also then start that game, right?
Yeah, Ashish. So there is one question. How is it different than VIT and regulatory compliance built in Azure Security Center for Azure resources?
Fantastic. That's a great question. So remember, the tools that are built into, say, Azure and AWS, right? First of all, they're great tools. So they're using them. Please continue to do so. The challenge that you will find is, number one, is it becomes limited to that cloud, right? So you can't use Azure Security Center for AWS and then Google, right? So if you're in a multi-cloud environment, it becomes very difficult to have a single view of all your environments. But the other few important things to keep in mind is this is an agentless technology, which means that you can be up and running by the time
We can hear you.
Okay. So I don't know when I got cut off. Yeah.
I think there are some issues. Ashish, are you back?
I'm back. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you well. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know when I broke off. My apologies. Pleasures of working from home.
Yeah.
So where did I drop off when
Yeah, so there was a compliance issue that we were answering on the Azure Security Center.
Sure.
Yeah.
So sorry if I'm repeating something, but okay. Azure Security Center, AWS Guard Duty, and Security Hub. These tools are great when it comes to looking at compliances for the specific clouds, but when you look at multi-cloud, it becomes a problem because you need a single view of all your clouds. Second thing is the GSL that we offer, right? We do it for a reason, because we want you to be able to customize your compliance, which is a very important requirement. When you do that with the native tools, there is a element of development. And again, look, security teams always don't have a lot of resources available. You want to be able to be self-sufficient and run this as a small unit. So this is where customers who adopted Checkpoint they really like it because without a lot of effort, they're able to do these customizations on their own, and it's up and running, right? So these are some of the things, but then also if you look at overall in terms of coverage, in terms of the number of attributes which are covered, the number of rules which are there, so we cover something like 2,400 rules today, right? You will find that because Dome9 was a leader in this space, we have a head start of about 6 to 7 years in front of all of these technologies which have recently been added to the cloud providers. So you will find when you place both the tools side by side, you will find that there's a difference even for that individual cloud. That's the reason you will find that we are also integration partners. So if someone does want to consume Azure Security Center for that matter, you can take Dome9 findings and actually plug it into Azure Security Center because there is a delta that we bring in, right? A significant delta.
Okay. There is one more question that has came. Just let me. Just 1 minute. So meanwhile, Ashish, I think we can start quiz, or maybe if there are 2 to 3 questions, we can park it. We can park it after the game that we are going to play.
Absolutely. And so, guys, there is a small token of appreciation for whoever is the winner. So please do share your details so that we can give you that. So before we start this game, before Vivek launches it for you, I would like to request that you have 2 things. Let me open up a separate browser and go to gsl.dome9.com, the screen that I was sharing earlier. What I will do is, as we go ahead with the game, for the first, so it's a Kahoot game if you've played it before, right? So there will be, you're rewarded for answering it fast. So you have to answer correctly and you have to answer fast. So for anyone who understands the question and is able to answer it, I give them a leeway of 10 seconds. After 10 seconds, I will give you a hint, which you should use to go and search inside the gsl.dome9.com page to get you an answer to that question. All right. I hope that's going to give.
Yes, Ashish. Yes. I think Ashish, your video is again stuck. Okay, so meanwhile he joins, we'll just prepare for the Kahoot platform. So okay, so he's rejoining.
Yeah, to take part in the quiz, may I request the audience to please log on to kahoot.it, www.it. Once you log on, it will ask you for a game pin where you can enter this number.
You can pick your phones and simply go to the Chrome browser and go to www.kahoot.it.
Yeah, it is best to log on from a mobile device.
Yeah.
Thanks, Vivek.
Hi, I'm back. So just remember, you'll see the question on your screen. So you're going to be playing with 3 things, right? You'll have your mobile phone where you're going to launch Kahoot.it. When Vivek is sharing the screen, you'll be able to see the question on the screen.
Yeah.
And the hint will be in the other browser window, which is gsl.dome9.com. So you're getting the ability to kind of play the day in a life of a SOC operator. Multiple screens.
Right. So I think you have the game pin. Once you visit www.kahoot.it, please enter that game pin. Enter your name. Since there are prizes, so enter your right name. So in case you win, you will get some exciting token of appreciation from Checkpoint. So people are joining. Let's wait for a few minutes and then we can start with questions.
All right.
Akshat, someone is saying that to load the content. Can you check?
I'm sorry, what's the query, Vivek?
The query is that he's saying that game doesn't seem to load the content.
The content.
Yeah, so I think I'm not sure
Well,
what
the
it
game
is.
hasn't, well, the
Because
game hasn't started
yet. So are you able to see the screen which we are right now showing on our screen? So simply go to the cloud.it. It will ask your name and then you enter the game pin, and we will soon start with the quiz.
The game would start when I click start here.
Yeah. So just we are waiting for people to join. If everyone joins, then let's start, Akshat. I think
we have 17 participants as of now. Please let me know.
Yeah. So I request everyone to please log in and join. People are joining. Okay. So let's start. I think meanwhile people will join. Let's start, Akshat.
Sure. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
So here's the first question. Vivek, if you can read out.
Yeah. So GDPR AWS S3 bucket should have the options are location, data center, region, and address. So you need to choose the right icon on your mobile phone, whether it's a triangle or maybe whether it's a circle. So you need to choose the right option on your mobile device.
Okay. So just a hint, in your gsl.online.com, go to AWS and search for Europe. And you'll be able to zero in on the actual statement and you can get the answer there.
Yeah. How many responses we have received? 17. Okay. So the hint is very clear, and I think Ashish have also covered this while he was talking about the configuration. So pretty easy question. Okay, so region, and I think that's the right answer. And 12 people have answered it right. 5 people are saying location, 4 people are saying data center, 2 are saying address. So I think the right answer is region, because all those EU Central, EU West are the region where actually you host your, the data on AWS public cloud. So I think, Akshat, next question. Okay. So GDPR Azure should have a region North Europe or region West Europe. So options are data, storage account, S3 bucket, and docs.
This time we're talking about specifically about storage.
Yeah.
And again, the hint is go to Azure on your gsl.dom9.com tab and search for Europe. As you see, guys, in this one, in this quiz, we not only allow you to cheat, we encourage you to cheat, because at the end of the day, it's important that you're able to set up the security for your cloud.
Yeah. If you're working day and out in the compliance or cloud compliance, you would answer within a second. I think it's not that tough. So we are just we have 50 more seconds left. So I think we do have a music on while we are playing game, right? I think there is one provision. Okay, anyways. From 19 answers so far, 20.
If you didn't join, maybe you get the rest of the questions back.
Yeah. Yeah, so 9 people are saying storage account. Then 9 people are saying S3 bucket. No one is saying documents. 2 people are saying a data. So the name is heading that. So we can go to the next question.
All right.
So GCP storage logs should have logging. So options are blob storage, S3 bucket, storage bucket, and data. So any hint here, Ashish, for the participants?
Absolutely. So the hint is now go to the Google tab, the GCP tab in gsl.dom9.com and search for storage.
Yeah. So meanwhile, let me ask you, Ashish. What's your observation in terms of compliance on the cloud? Do clients finding really difficult, and how do you see now India's private application bill is now tabled, and soon it will be the law? So how do you see the cloud adoption in India? And secondly, how do you see the compliance as a big challenge? Definitely, the operational challenges and all the challenges with respect to security operations, those will get solved. But what about the compliance, and how your product will help Indian customers to solve that challenge?
So first of all, the good news is that this service is completely compliant with data residency, which means that anyone who is who's covered under the data residency requirements for the upcoming laws, they can use this tool. But in terms of general compliance, we do find that it is low. So the first time the customers run this tool on their environment, it is a bit of a shock, because they think that they're doing okay, but it's an eye opener, right? So the sooner they know, the better. So the customers who have been in this space for a while, who've taken on the compliance challenge about a year back, I think they'll be very well placed when it comes to these upcoming regulations.
Yeah.
So they've already been practicing it because everybody knew it was coming and they had to be prepared for it. It's just that they didn't know the enormity of the problem till they actually went in and started looking at a deep dive of their environment. So for everyone, I would.
Right. So 10 people are saying that storage bucket, 3 people are saying S3 bucket, and then 2 people are saying a block storage, and 2 people are saying the data. All right.
So GCP.
Yeah. Yeah. So Akshat, next question, please. So AWS hardware multi-factor authentication for a root user, IAM user where name is like root account should have the password type, MFA type, cloud or key type.
All right. So the hint is go to the AWS tab and search for MFA. Now you see that it's I'm making it slightly more complicated. You have to look at least a few options to figure out which ones we're looking at, but you'll find that it's fairly easy when you start the tool.
Correct. So one question, Ashish, in line to the configuration of identity access management over the cloud. We know that most of the larger organizations, for them, it's not about just configuring 1 or 2 instances, but they involve a lot of scale and complexity in their DevOps. While having and spinning their containers or maybe their instance. So how do you ensure to have that particular identity access policies across those particular workload and those instances? So what kind of extra care that the security architecture or maybe your security team of that particular organization takes care of? What are the measures that you need to take in terms of MFA?
So look, I mean MFA is more for your console access, so you need to. It's like a de facto standard. You should not be running a cloud without MFA in place. But even when it comes to privileges for each of these services, you need to follow what's called the least privilege approach, right?
Right.
Only grant privileges that are really required, and you need to take a hard look at what's required and take out everything else. Because the biggest problem that I see is people put up too many privileges just to ensure that their operations are not going to be hit. But you're taking a big risk there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think MFA type, 11 people are saying MFA type, 4 people are saying password type, and 2 people are saying key type. So none of them are saying the cloud. Okay, so MFA type is majority.
Correct.
Okay. So Gibbs had sticks with the 4 answers right in a row. So the person who is so now next question, Azure SQL Server is encrypted. SQL DB should have logging enabled or password enabled or encryption.status enabled or alarm.status enabled. So this is regarding the SQL Server encryption. So what SQL database should have? Whether logging.enabled or password.enabled, encryption.status enabled or alarm.status enabled.
All right. So what you should do is go to the Azure tab, search for SQL. Now you that there is a main on the left side. Go and click on encryption and key management.
Yeah. I think keeping your database safe is another aspect. Where when we discuss the configuration of S3 buckets, when we discuss the identity access management of your privileged users. So another aspect is definitely keeping your databases secure on the cloud. So Ashish, there is always confusion among the consumer about the shared responsibility about protecting your database. when we talk about public cloud, who the responsibility is that, and so what are some high-level instruction when you are protecting your database?
Look, first things first, ensure that there is no public exposure unless you're in a specific business that requires you to expose the database publicly. It's something that we should avoid, and it's something that we see very often, right? So it's one of those first things that you need to go and fix. Secondly, if you do need to still give access to a database to someone outside of your cloud environment, it should be over a secure VPN tunnel. It should be over SSL, not a public exposure, right? So this is one of those cardinal sins that you have to avoid.
Right. So now the encryption.status, 13 people are saying, 3 people are saying login.enabled, 2 people are saying alarm.status. So I think 13 people are already saying encryption.status. Okay, next.
Moving in the right direction. This group is moving in the right direction.
Yeah. So next question, Akshat. I think we are left with how many questions? Okay, so it's a 6th question. So GCP, no public VM, any VM instance should not have is exposed is equal to true, or is private is equal to true, or is open is equal to true, or is public is equal to true. I think just now we discussed this, and I think it's very easy answer.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Ashish, so most of the organizations now moving towards the containerization, since the kind of a flexibility and the kind of agility it brings in DevOps. Most of the organizations are embarking towards Kubernetes or either Mesos or Docker. So if you have the capabilities to protect the container workload as well, and how to ensure the compliance over the containers. We would like to hear from you.
Absolutely. So first of all, yes, all these standards apply. So you should be making sure that your Kubernetes deployments are CIS benchmark compliant. There's NIST 800, the standard which is available. These should be applied. And in our tool, we allow the same kind of compliance over Kubernetes, just like you would do for AWS, Azure, or Google. So it can be Kubernetes even deployed on your on-premise environment, right? So we cover it with that. But also, very importantly, in Kubernetes, it's necessary to ensure that your images, which you may be packaging yourself, are not vulnerable. So we make it part of shift left, right? Which is again something which is available on the tool. So very, very important to that.
Okay. So 5 seconds left. 3, 2, 1. Yeah. So 11 people should not saying that it should not have is public is equal to true. 5 people are saying is exposed is equal to true. Okay. So I think 2 people are saying that you should not have is private is equal to true, and 2 people are saying is open is equal to true. Okay. Next question. Okay, next Akshat. Yeah. So GCP, no public, RDP should not have inbound rules, contains destination port is equal to 3389 and source is equal to the address. So what is the right we should answer for this, whether it's a GCP port, GCP security group, GCP policy, or GCP rules? What should not have inbound rules contain?
The objective is simple here. You want to avoid any RDP being exposed.
Yes.
Very disastrous.
Otherwise, yes, because I think these days most of the exploits, most of the ransomware attacks, they are trying to attack RDP as their low-hanging fruit. So I think we need to be very handle carefully when there are any remote connections.
Absolutely. We've seen entire VDI farms going down.
Yes.
One instance being. So, by the way, is GCP and search for RDP. Very simple.
Right, right. And so is there any kind of risk when we are also doing a VDI or maybe using kind of infrastructure? If you are using any remote workforce software, that time also we need to take extra care in terms of remote protocols?
Absolutely. Two things very, very important. Remember that this is happening in a data center, even if it's a VDI running off a public cloud. If the data that's in those images is still your responsibility. So you need to put it behind the firewall, and also you need to do segmentation, right? You can't allow segments to talk because if the instance is corrupted, it could laterally spread infection to your full data center, to your full cloud.
Okay. Okay. So I think we'll wait for another 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay. So 7 people are saying GCP security group, 4 people are saying GCP rules, 3 people are saying GCP port, and 2 people are saying GCP policy. Okay.
Majority of it.
Yeah. Next. Okay, so Azure ensures the keyword logging. Keyword should have diagnostic setting, logging settings, or audit settings, or log settings. What should it contain?
Right. Now the hint is go to the Azure tab and search for keyword. And apply the rest of the context of the question to be able to get the right rule there.
Yeah. So actually just one question, since we are now dealing with the different public cloud platforms. We are talking about AWS configurations, Azure. So in a multi-cloud setup, if organization is choose to go on multi-cloud, is it difficult to enforce the compliance across multi-cloud environment? Because client usually asks that definitely okay, our business demands use of a multi-cloud, but what about security and compliance? So what's your take on that? How do they ensure that compliance remains distributed and same across the multi-cloud environment, and still you ensure the security?
No, absolutely. And for that, CSPM is really the only answer. So from our part, what you can do is have the same policy. So you choose what policy it is, whether it's PCI DSS or ISO 27001 or your own custom policies. And then those can be uniformly applied across all of those cloud environments, every cloud type and every cloud subscription, and then you get a singular view of how you're placed there. So that's a really critical thing to do. If you're in a multi-cloud environment, you should definitely look at CSPM as your next GIT project.
Yeah, that's right. Right. Okay, so we are just waiting to finish. Yeah. Okay, so 9 people are saying that logging settings, 4 people are saying diagnostic setting, and 5 people are saying log settings, and 2 people are saying the audit settings. Okay.
For all those who went to for those 4 people who probably went to the browser, good on you, right? Because
yeah, they got it right. Yeah, nice question. So AWS S3 buckets encryption at rest. S3 bucket should have encryption.intransit, encryption.server-side encryption rules, encryption.status, or encryption.enabled. So AWS S3 bucket encryption at rest.
Yes. And the hint is go to the AWS tab, type search S3, and then from the left-hand side, choose encryption and key management. That will help you narrow down the specific rule that you need to be looking at.
Yeah.
Finish it quickly. This is the last one, and the speed counts.
Yeah, and we left with just 1 minute, so we need to wrap it up. Only 9 answers. I think they are exploring our hint and going back to the portal and checking it.
Yes.
11 answers. So Ashish, is there any checklist of security configuration of S3 buckets? Because what we hear from recent breaches that happen, most of the breaches and data leaks happen due to the weak security configuration of those S3 buckets, and that's really disastrous. So is there any checklist that we have so that we can give it to the participants and they can leverage that?
Absolutely. So, of course, it's available in the product, but the tool that you've been using right now, which is gsl.dome9.com, go to the AWS tab, and then on the left-hand side, you have something called Entity. Just select S3 bucket from there, right? You will find all the rules for S3 bucket in that particular section.
Okay. So 10 people are saying encryption dot enabled, 6 people are saying encryption dot server side encryption rules, and no one is saying encryption dot status. One person is saying encryption dot in transit. Okay.
Server side rules.
Yeah. Next, please. Akshat.
I think 9th. So there were 9 questions.
Yeah. So okay, so there are 9 questions. So the first person is Simi. So congratulate Simi. The second question is also by the same person, or it's the same. Okay. And third person is Vives. But okay, so these are the winners for the game, but we are hardly able to recognize the name. So please put your full name so that we could recognize you from the participants. All right.
Look, everyone who's picked up something about cloud security in this webinar, in my mind, is a winner. But please, if you want that gift, do let us know who you are so we can send it to you.
Sure. Thanks, Ashish. Thanks. I think it's an interesting workshop, Ashish. I think I personally learned a lot. And I think all the participants must have taken good insights from the workshop. It was really nice and engaging workshops conducted by you. Nice preparation in terms of the presentations, demonstration, and the game. So I sincerely thank you from a DSCI to conduct this insightful workshop. And we look forward to engage with you in the near future. Thank you, Ashish. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for attending.
Thank you so much. Thank you, audience, for your engaging kind of gesture. Thank you. Thanks, Ashish. Thanks, Checkpoint team.
Bye.